There was something almost sacred about Christmas nights between the 1950s and the 1980s. The blinking lights in the window, the soft sound of bells blended with the crackling fireplace, and that unmistakable smell of fresh popcorn. Before streaming existed, American Christmas happened on the TV screen, a shared ritual. Families gathered on the couch, blankets on their laps, waiting for the movie that would define the night. It was the moment when cinema entered the home and turned simple stories into timeless traditions. Each film seemed to promise the same miracle. For a few hours, the world stood still, and Christmas became magical again. It's a Wonderful Life, 1946, the original spirit. Before any Christmas movie tradition existed, there was George Bailey, an ordinary man carrying the weight of the world. In It's a Wonderful Life, Christmas stops being just a backdrop and becomes a revelation about the value of life itself. George, standing on the edge of despair, discovers, with the help of a clumsy angel, that every small gesture he made shaped the destiny of others. This simplicity turned the film into a mirror of the American soul, hope in dark times, faith amid chaos, and the belief that we matter far more than we realize. In the end, when the entire town comes together to save him, the audience feels something rare, the confirmation that goodness can still prevail. That moment, repeated for decades on both small and big screens, is not just about Christmas, but about the power of humanity in its purest form. Miracle on 34th Street, 1947, The Christmas of Faith. Right after the war, when the world was trying to relearn how to believe in something, an old man with a white beard appeared claiming to be the real Santa Claus. Miracle on 34th Street brought a new dimension to Christmas, faith in the midst of disbelief. In a time when skepticism reached even the hearts of children, the film dared to turn a courtroom into a stage for magic. The debate over Santa Claus's existence became a metaphor for hope, innocence, and the human need to believe in the impossible. The image of old Kris Kringle being judged for defending the Christmas spirit reflected the struggle of a generation still healing from the scars of war. Every smile, every tear from the audience was a way of reclaiming lost childhood. Watching this film was a reminder that Christmas doesn't need evidence, only faith, and that sometimes the greatest truths live in the stories we choose to believe. 1950s, Christmas comes to the TV screen. In the 1950s, Christmas found a new home, the living room. Television, still a shiny new invention, transformed the season into a domestic spectacle. Families gathered around the screen as if gathering by the fireplace, mesmerized by the idea of seeing the Christmas spirit broadcast live. Shows like The Ed Sullivan Show brought musical performances and appearances by Hollywood stars, while the Rankin-slash-based stop-motion specials gave face, voice, and movement to myths that once lived only in the imagination. It was the era of Technicolor innocence, when Rudolph, Frosty, and Santa became as much a part of the Christmas ritual as dinner or presents. The glow of the lights reflected on the TV felt almost magical, and with each new special, audiences felt Christmas come alive before their eyes, as if the screen itself were a window into the heart of America. Hollywood Express, the Christmas musicals. If Christmas in the 1950s had a television soul, cinema still held the power to make people dream. It was the era of musicals, vibrant, colorful, and irresistibly charming. White Christmas, 1954, brought Bing Crosby and Danny Kaye singing Beneath Artificial Snow, so perfect it felt lifted from an American dream. And Holiday in 1942, constantly re-aired in the following decades, reinforced the idea that Christmas was made of reunions, goodbyes, and second chances. The screens overflowed with flawless choreography, shimmering costumes, and melodies that became part of the collective memory. For many, these films were more than entertainment. They were the reflection of a country longing to believe again in the beauty of simple things. Watching a Christmas musical felt like boarding a golden train to a place where optimism was the rule and love inevitable. The age of dreams and change. In the 1960s, Christmas began to reflect the spirit of a country that dreamed high. Counterculture flourished, the Beatles played on radio, and Coca-Cola commercials mixed peace, love, and snowy pines. It was a decade when even Santa looked more modern, more pop. Films like Rudolph, the Red-Nosed Reindeer, 1964, brought vibrant colors, messages of acceptance, and the light fantasy that combined with the optimism of the time. Christmas gained new meanings, less about consumption, more about union and diversity. The stories began to celebrate the different, the improbable, the magical. For many, the 1960s Christmas was the most dreamy of all, a time when children believed in flying reindeers and adults somehow still believed in humanity. 70s. Realism, crisis, and nostalgia. The 70s arrived with the weight of reality. The optimism of previous decades began to unravel between economic crises, conflicts, and a certain collective melancholy. Christmas, which before seemed untouchable, began to show cracks. Films like Scrooge, 1970, revisited old ghosts, now with a darker and more human look. And works like Christmas Evil explored the loneliness and disappointment that many felt in front of a changing world. Still, there was beauty in this new sincerity. Christmas became more intimate, less idealized, a reflection of real life. The supper was no longer just about abundance, but about being together, even when everything seemed uncertain. It was in this mixture of cynicism and tenderness that the Christmas spirit reinvented itself, imperfect, but still full of hope. 80s Christmas on VHS. The arrival of the video cassette changed everything. Suddenly, Christmas no longer depended on TV programming. It fit in a tape that could be rewound as many times as the heart wanted. The 80s turned the Christmas cinema into a domestic show, where classics coexisted with new experiences. Gremlins, 1984, showed that Christmas could be chaotic and fun, mixing terror and tenderness in the same package. Duro de Matar, 1988, took the Christmas spirit to the skyscrapers, exchanging reindeer for explosions and still keeping the message of unity. It was the beginning of the marathon era, when entire families gathered to review their favorite movies, each bringing their piece of childhood. They just kept more than stories. It preserved memories, laughter, and that same feeling that even in the chaos of the 80s, Christmas was still a refuge. The trails that defined decades. No Christmas movie would be the same without its soundtrack. The songs were the beating heart of these stories, shaping entire generations with melodies that seemed to warm even the coldest winters. The soft vocals of Bing Crosby in White Christmas to the contagious rhythm of Last Christmas from Wham. Each song carried a fragment of the American soul. They played on radios, shops, family dinners, and later in the commercials that packed December. They were more than songs, they were sound memories. It was enough to hear some chords so that the lights would flash again to memory, the rappers gained color, and the smell of pine filled the air. In each note there was the same silent invitation: slow down, remember and feel. These tracks were the emotional glue between the decades, uniting the past and the present in a single melody of longing and hope. The Christmas cinema of the 50s to 80s left more than memories. It left a feeling. Each generation lived it differently, in black and white, on TV matinees or VHS tapes but the emotion remained the same. These films were more than stories about snow and gifts. They were portraits of a time when people believed that goodness could change the world, even for a few hours. They taught us that Christmas is not an event, but a state of mind, a pause in the noise to remember who we are, where we come from, and what we still want to preserve. Today, in revisiting them, we do not seek only nostalgia, but a reunion with what made us simple, hopeful, and human. Because, in the end, Christmas is still this, the living memory that love, like these classics, never leaves the scene. If you felt your heart warm with this journey in time, watch the video and subscribe to the channel so as not to miss the next stops on this trip back in time. And tell us in the comments, which of these movies packed your Christmas?